Okay. Okay, we're on. You want to? Oh, yeah, I'll have. Okay.
Hello, everybody, and hello. Yes, there's some people in the Zoom too, so I'll say hello too. My name is Akiva Ariel. I'm from the team of Beyadenu, Returning to the organization. Yaakov here is from aboard, and he's going to talk to you about the principle. If you want to thank you for coming and learning, thank you as Ullman family for hosting this event. Um, uh, Around here on the table, you have a QR that you can follow us on WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp channel and a WhatsApp group. And almost the same, that's whatever you prefer to have our option. And we have a newsletter. You can follow us and see more of the stuff that we do over the year. And again, thank you very much for hosting this event. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
So I'm since 1997, 2013, Yaakov is giving testimony. That's it. Interviewed on his television, Yaakov and his wife Margaret come in time and Project Team to have Yaakov.
Thanks for inviting me. Okay. Um, as Harold said, I've been in Israel for 38 years. And I think about it, I come to Israel, and the holiest place of the Jewish people is the Temple Mount. It didn't ever occur to me to even investigate it, to check it, nothing. It took 11 years, and I was then just kind of like searching on the internet. And for some reason, I thought Temple Mount. So I looked and I saw a telephone number and I called and I saw actually when I phoned, I heard on the other side of the phone a Hasidic accent, which was very strange to me because I figured Orthodox or Hasidic people, from what I understand, they don't go up to the Temple Mount. So I told him that and he laughed. He said, "Come to a lecture and you'll learn different things." And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And that's when I started going up to Har HaBayit 27 years ago. Um, And I was, on the one hand, I was incredibly uplifted. I mean, to imagine I'm now in the holiest place for the Jewish people where there were two temples. On the one hand, it's incredible to think about. On the other hand, like I see that I can't like almost do anything. We're talking about 27 years ago. Nothing. I mean, I can't be a Jew on the Temple Mount. There's nothing on the Temple Mount that has any indication that is connected to the Jewish people. I mean, and try and understand where I'm coming from. Like I grew up in Southern California, grew up in Anaheim, actually, near Disneyland. But I remember in 1960, I was 6 years old, and I'm sitting on the floor in front of a black and white television, and I see this little black girl going into a white school because the desegregation law was passed, and the president, who was Kennedy at the time, was sure there's going to be violence. So he organized like, I don't know, 1,000 National Guard to come out and protect the rights of this little black girl going into a white school. I was 6 years old looking at my television. I was like, I was proud of my country. So like I come to Israel with this mindset that it's a democracy and you have rights and they should be protected. And I see the exact opposite. We should be able to, as Jews, go into the Temple Mount and do what Jews do. And I see we can't. A few years later, my father, may he rest in peace, they came to Israel And he was already like 79 years old. And I explained all of that to him. And he says, I don't believe it. It can't possibly be. I said, you know what, Pop? Take a small Tehillim, like a small Tehillim, and put it in your pocket. And you'll come up to with me to the Temple Mount. And at a certain point, when I say, take it out of your pocket, see what happens. So he took it out of his pocket. Within minutes, he was surrounded by police, a 79-year-old man, like I'm 70 now. He was 9 years older than I am now. What kind of a threat does he pose to the Middle East? He was surrounded by police. They told him, if you don't put that back in your pocket, you're out of here. So that's where we started. And at the time that I started going up to Har HaBayit, there was maybe 2,000 Jews going up a year, 1,000, 2,000. And we'll see a chart a little bit later. It looks like this calendar year, civil calendar year, by the end of December, will be close to 70,000 Jews up to Har HaBayit. And I remember once, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was talking to a policeman. He said, what is it that you want? I said, what I want is we'll get to about 100,000 Jews going up to Har HaBayit every year, and then you won't be able to tell us what to do. We're getting close. We're already close to 70,000. Another year or two, we'll pass the 100,000 mark. All right, so what I'd like to do this evening, I don't have these sheets. I got from Harold. I'll go through them. Please, if you have questions as we're speaking, don't hesitate. After we go through the list, I'll hand out something that I prepared. We'll see how much time we have to go into things a bit more in depth. It's in Hebrew, but I'll translate as needed. And any questions you have, feel free. Okay, so yeah, why is it halakhically okay to ascend Har HaBayit? And who are the rabbis? Now, why is it okay? It's actually, as we see later, it's a mitzvah to go up to Har HaBayit. I mean, I was also brainwashed when I first came to Israel that it's forbidden. It's not forbidden. It's the exact opposite. And we'll see why it's the exact opposite. And we have to understand that when the temple existed, people didn't just go up, Jews didn't go up to the Temple Mount just to offer sacrifices. Most Jews that came up to the Temple Mount came there to pray. And we'll see in the materials later that I hand out that at the dedication ceremony of the temple, King Solomon he didn't say anything about sacrifices. He spoke about prayer. And not just Jews, even non-Jews. So the main reason we go up to Har HaBayit is to pray. There's all kinds of other reasons as well, which we'll go into. So, why is it halakhically acceptable? If it's halakhically acceptable. It's even a mitzvah if we do it the way it has to be done. We'll talk about how do you prepare yourself, where you can go, where you can't go. But if you go according to the restrictions of halakha, it's a major mitzvah. Even though I know you've heard the exact opposite, but that's not the case. You guys can take. This was a list of rabbis that support going up to Har HaBayit. Now, this list was made 5 years ago. There's about 60 names on this list. We stopped making this list 5 years ago because now it's hundreds. It's hundreds. If you make a list, it would be like 2 or 3 pages, but feel free to take these later. We're willing to put their name in print that they're in favor of it. Why do some rabbis disagree? I would say most of the rabbis that disagree, I would say not even most, 95% of the rabbis that disagree are not disagreeing on halachic terms. Because there's no way that you can prove halachically that it's forbidden. You can say only if you go up to the right place, if you've done the proper preparations, that's true. But if you've done that, it's a mitzvah. And if you listen carefully to the people that say that you shouldn't, not one of them speaks halachically. They'll have other kinds of reasons. You're going to ignite the Middle East. They don't know where they're going. They haven't done the right thing. They haven't gone to a mikvah. But that's all not right, because by the fact that we go up to Har HaBayit, we have increased consciousness about how to go up to Har HaBayit. So instead of staying away from Har HaBayit, by going into Har HaBayit, you educate. People understand what they have to do, why it's important. So again, listen carefully to people that say that you should go up to Har HaBayit, and you'll see they're never talking about halakha. It's political reasons. If you ask them, they'll say, well, my rabbi said I can't. Your rabbi said. But that's not what you're meant to do. I mean, things change. Many years ago, Many, many years ago, people didn't know the answers to the basic questions. People didn't know the answer to the basic questions, so they said it's forbidden. It's like a person works in agriculture, saying, I don't want to work in agriculture in Israel because I don't know what the laws are. Well, so find out the laws and work in agriculture. It's very simple. So the rabbi, political reasons. I also have to tell you, chief rabbinate since 1967, the chief rabbinate hasn't devoted one session, not one session, to talking about the halakhic ramifications of going to Har HaBayit. The holiest place for the Jewish people, and the chief rabbinate hasn't even one time discussed it. So you have to understand the the those who are saying that they're against is usually it's political reasons. It has nothing to do with halakha. People that go up, they won't go. And so we'll just say it's forbidden, so we won't have any problems. Well, if that's the case, then people shouldn't get married either, because when people get married, there's halachot of mikvah, and when man and wife can be together. So let's not get into that. Let's just not get married altogether. It's the same idea. We have a mitzvah, like anything with lulav and etrog. There's a way to do it. With tefillin, there's a way to do it. With every mitzvah that we have, there's a way to do it. And if you don't do it the way it's supposed to be done, you're not doing a mitzvah. The same thing with Har HaBayit. It's a mitzvah. Not only is it a mitzvah, Beit HaMikdash, 1/3 of all of the mitzvot that we have are connected to the temple. So if we don't have a temple, we're missing out on 1/3 of our mitzvot. That's not something that can be done lightly. I mean, there's no reason for that to happen. It's true. We've come back to Israel. We've left the galut. Coming back to the temple is something which we have to study, but it has to be done. I mean, I was once at a lecture of an Orthodox rabbi in Beit Shemesh, Rav Milinowitz, who's passed away since then. And he said, I didn't come here to talk politics. I came here to talk halakha. Now, there's an Orthodox rabbi, Haredi rabbi. He said, anybody that says halakhically is forbidden to go up to Har HaBayit doesn't know what he's talking about. And that was from a Haredi rabbi. And that's the truth. I mean, if we study the mitzvah, then it's not only permissible, it's a positive. We'll get to that. We'll find it in the Quran. We'll find it. I'll hand that out a bit later. How has the halakha evolved regarding whether one can ascend the Har HaBayit? This relates to what you're asking here. I mean, we'll see that from the Torah, it's permissible to go up to Har HaBayit if we go in the right places. I'll show you sources, and I'll show you a map. I shouldn't say that halakha hasn't evolved. It's the same halakha that we have from the Torah. Torah shebichtav, Torah shebal peh. There hasn't been any change since the time of Beit HaMikdash. It hasn't evolved. It's the same halakha. We just didn't know it, or we didn't learn it. But we'll see it a bit later. Why, in your opinion, now I have a problem with this question, because I would say, what's a better argument, to observe Shabbat or not to observe Shabbat? It's not an argument. I don't have an argument. If somebody tells me that I should go up to Har HaBayit, it's his opinion. But I know from halakhic sources that I'm doing a good thing if I go up to Har HaBayit. So it's not a matter of a better argument. Is it a better argument to do a mitzvah or not to do a mitzvah? No argument. Doing a mitzvah is doing a mitzvah. There's no argument not to do a mitzvah. Okay. Now, going into Har HaBayit requires what's called ritual purity. The main thing is to go into a mikveh, and it's the same thing for a man and a woman. For a man, it's a little bit simpler. A man, we're talking about becoming ritually clean from bodily emissions. So for a man, he just goes to a mikveh in the morning, and he can go up to Har HaBayit. It's that simple. You can't wear leather shoes. You have to remember, if you go up to Har HaBayit, you can anything non-leather. Sandals, barefoot is also okay. Socks, that's all okay. Rubber shoes, all that's okay. But the main thing is to be in a mikvah for men that morning. Technically, you can go the day before. It's not advisable, because if a man has had an emission, he has to go back to the mikveh. So the best thing is in the morning, go to a mikveh, and then you're clear. Now for women, it's similar. A woman also goes to a mikveh after her period, after she's counted the 7 days. After she goes to a mikveh after the 7 days of purity, she can go up to the Har HaBayit. If after that she's been with her husband, with relation, she has to go to the mikveh again. But again, she just goes, for women, the mikveh is not usually open during morning and afternoon hours, so she goes in the evening before. And then she's ready to go to Har HaBayit the next day. Again, the same thing in terms of shoes, men and women. No leather shoes, plastic, rubber, cloth, but not leather shoes, and you're okay with it. Right. A woman in her period can't go to Har HaBayit. No, she has to after has she's gone to the mikvah after the seven counted clean days, and she goes to the mikvah. She hasn't been with her husband. She can go up to Har HaBayit. Most women are with their husband after the mikvah, so then they just go to the mikvah again and they can go up to Har HaBayit. It's fairly simple. Okay. Now, is there a mikvah? Is there a mikvah in your neighborhood that? Yeah. Yeah. So just to be on the safe side, she go to the mikvah the night before. Uh, okay. Now you're asking an interesting question. There's nobody. No, there's nobody. There's nobody at the entrance to Har HaBayit that asks you. Nobody. Hashem knows everything. Okay, but nobody will ask you. There's no policeman. There's nobody from our organization that you go to a mikvah. And there's an interesting reason for that. We won't go into it now, right now, but it's between you and Hashem. Once you know the halacha. By the way, I have an interesting story about that. I'll get your question in a second. Go ahead. Technically, yes, but the problem is when you go into a mikvah, you have to be naked. So, I mean, you have to. I'll just, I'll just explain. I'll just explain when you do the mikvah, you have to first of all before the mikvah. There's one other thing I didn't talk about. Preparing for the mikvah. You don't just go to a mikvah and dunk. It's very much like a woman going to the mikvah. Before she goes to the mikvah, what she has to do, even before she showers, she has to cut her fingernails. Yeah. She has to make sure that there's nothing on her body, which is like a chatzitza, which is blocks the water touching your skin, like makeup or a band-aid. That kind of thing has to be removed. Same thing for men. You've got to clean your body before you do the shower. Make sure that your fingernails, your toenails, there's nothing on your skin that has to be removed. Then you shower in shampoo, and then you don't go into the mikvah. Extremely important to remember that. Now you don't have to go crazy. I mean, it's not like you have to check everything. What a person normally does to be clean. What? Yeah. However, I find a real base problem here with regards to the fact that everybody's tameh in today's day and age. What kind of tameh? In general. Well, what's in general? We have. Well, we do. Well, actually, we do. Halachically, we do. But there's different sources of tum'ah. If you're talking about what's called tumat mate, you're right. We are all tmeim, But we'll see later that tumat mate is not forbidden on Harabayit for 90% of Harabayit. It's forbidden in a part of Harabayit which we don't enter. But all of the other parts of Harabayit, it's okay. The other tuma, which we spoke about, tumat haguf, that we take care of by mikvah. So it's okay. No, that's generally, I guess it's done for a woman. Yeah, but generally going up to Harabayit, there's no shomer. At least not for men. I've never seen a case where there's a shomer checking that you've gone in. But you do have to be careful. You have to be sure that you're completely. I imagine for women that are going to the mikveh, they're not going to be. Just to make sure that your head goes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I imagine for the women's mikveh, there will be a balanit there, and she'll make sure that your head goes under. Men have to be careful that their heads, there's no balan in the mikveh when a man goes. But just be careful, be sure that your head goes under. Now, one other thing, we say a bracha. We say a bracha before we do that. Now, how do we do that? You're naked, right? So what you do is you're in the water. You don't say the bracha outside the water. You're in the water with your head outside the water. You take your arms and you cover your chest to make a division between the upper part of your body and the lower part of your body. Cover your head with kippah, which can be on the side. And then you say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu tzivanu, ala tvilah, now you can just do once. You can do as many as you like. I do 7 times. It's done. I do 7 times. Some people do 13 times. Some people go under and hold their breath for as long as they can. There's all kinds of different minhagim. But the simple thing is you say the bracha, you dip, make sure you're all inside, and you go out. By the way, you should clean your teeth. When you do the shower, you clean your teeth as well. You don't open your mouth in the mikvah, but just your teeth should be clean. And you also don't have to open your eyes. But don't close your eyes tight and don't close your mouth tight. Just natural. Your eyes closed, mouth closed, and dip. Any questions on the mikvah? Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll tell you. If you're going to the ocean, I don't see. There's not really a need for it. I mean, some people shower. Unfortunately, some mikvaot, they're not so pleasant, right? Whether it's chlorine or God knows what. I feel a need if I've been into a very highly chlorinated mikvah to rinse myself afterwards because I don't want that on my body. But if the water is fairly clean, like the ocean water, there's no reason to. It's not. It's suggested not to. It's suggested not to. But you make sure to take off your watch. Yeah, yeah.
There is a men's mikvah.
And one other thing on these, which I will be leaving with you, on the very last page, there's the name of a rabbi and a rabbinit. So anybody that has any questions, you can call them up freely. For a man, it's much more simple, but for a woman, she has questions. Lo naimli. I'd prefer not to go into too much detail. We'll be happy to speak with you. Their numbers there. Okay. All right. So let's go on with our list. Um, is it safe to ascend Harabite? I've been going. It's too safe. I don't understand what I mean by too safe. What I mean by that, first of all, I've been going to Harabite for 27 years. Never has there been any security incident to Jew. Never. And I'll explain why. You are surrounded by policemen. Why are you surrounded by policemen? It's crazy. We had a meeting with Itamar Ben-Gvir just last week, the heads of the different organizations, and they said, and we brought that whole thing up. Any public place you go to in Israel, you're not surrounded by police. Why are you surrounded by police when you go up to Harabait? Well, there's 2 reasons. They say it's for your safety. Why do they say it's for your safety? Because Jews have to go through a magnometer, right? A metal detector to make sure that you're not carrying guns or knives and all that. There's 9 entrances to Harabait. Jews are allowed to go through 1. Arabs are allowed to go through another 8. Are the Arabs checked? No. When were the Arabs checked? A number of years ago, when Yoram Halevi was the Nitzav, was the commander of the Jerusalem area, and there was a murder on Har HaBayit of Arabs, actually Druze policemen, by Arabs. So what did he do? He set up a metal detector on all of the gates going up to Har HaBayit. What happened? The Arabs said, we won't pass those, we won't go into Har HaBayit. He said, great. What's the problem? No problem. Well, what happened? Our revered prime minister told Yoram Halevi, take them away. Crazy, right? Crazy. But that's what happened. If they would put metal detectors on the entrance to at every entrance to Har HaBayit, the Arabs couldn't have knives, they couldn't have guns, they couldn't have anything that could harm anybody. And then you just have maybe two policemen stationed like every 50 meters, like any other public place in Israel, and they wouldn't have to surround you. But that's not the only reason. The other reason, until recently, they surrounded you is to make sure that you don't pray, that you don't take anything out of your pocket which resembles Tehillim or a Siddur or anything of that nature. So it's like they say it's for their security, but that's not so, because it could be easily. And I mentioned that to the minister Ben Gvir at our meeting. I said, listen, since the 7th of October, there's no justification for not being a metal detector at every entrance of the Temple Mount. Just makes no sense. I mean, the fact that you're surrounding us by policemen, that's not the way to go. I mean, the holiest place for the Jewish people in the world. I mean, I have to allow a situation where Arabs can enter with knives? Doesn't make any sense. But because that's the situation, there's no security problem. And I say again, it doesn't have to be done the way it's done, but there is no security problem. What safety measures are in place? As I mentioned, we're surrounded by police. We have to go through a metal detector. The Arabs don't, but they can't get anywhere near us. By the way, there was a time before a few years ago when you would go up to Har HaBayit, you would not only be surrounded by police, and you'd be surrounded by Waqf, the Arab representatives of the Waqf. And they would shout all kinds of things during the Jewish visits. A number of years ago, that was stopped. Baruch Hashem. I mean, things are improving a bit at a time. But there's the only security measures are that you're checked and you're surrounded by policemen. Okay. What does the status quo mean? Status quo means current status. That's all it is. Current status. Now, the current status was when did it start? Anybody know when the current status quo, when did it come into being? Why? That's right. That's the whole story. He said, I don't want this Vatican. Right? Moshe Dayan decided for the Jewish people that we don't want this Vatican. So we handed the keys back, and since then there's been a status quo. It's a busha. It's an embarrassment. It has to be stopped. There's no place in a democratic society for a status quo. They said all this time, by the way, it's going to ignite the Middle East. That's also nonsense. I have a business. My work is I work in all kinds of things related to real estate, and mainly redeeming Arab land. That's what I do. Now I also manage projects. But I was toying with something with oil, and I found the name of somebody in Dubai, a very staunch Muslim who was educated in America. I speak to him in English. I talked to him about the Temple Mount. And again, he's a very staunch Muslim. He says, Yaakov, I don't understand this nonsense about not letting Jews pray on the Temple Mount. A Muslim. He says, this is a place of peace. But the Muslims here are violent. I was once interviewed. I live on the Mount of Olives. I was once interviewed by Al Jazeera because they saw I was connected to the Mount. They wanted to come interview me. And so they thought they'd catch me. I mean, from where I live, you can see the gold dome from where I live. We can actually see it. We're very high. So he said, where do you want your temple to be? I said, well, you see it. You see that gold dome. I said, well, they said, well, there's a gold dome there. I said, well, you took it from us. You'll have to give it back. How are you going to give it back? Well, we pray that a day will come that you'll realize that you took it from us and you want to give it back to us peacefully. If it doesn't happen that way, it'll happen in a different way. He says, I can't believe you're telling me this. Nobody ever dared to say that to me. I said, but that's the truth. That's the truth. Why should I hide the truth from you? That's where the temple stood for 1,000 years. And that's where we're going to stand again, one way or another. I said, but the way we believe is not the way you believe. Because when our temple is existing, you can come pray there. Because we say this house, we say that the prophet Isaiah, our house is a house of prayer for all people. And I mean what I'm telling you. I want to take your hand right now and walk with you to the Temple Mount and pray with you inside. Would you do that? He said, no, it's ours. That's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. We have no problem with anybody coming up to the Temple Mount. I was once guiding a Christian group, and I said, let's put the cards on the table. You think it's going to be him, and we say it's going to be somebody else. What difference does it make? The whole world is going to go after him, whoever it is, right? So let's just make the world a better place to live in the meantime, right? You're right. But that's like 10% of the temple money. Right. In the temple, they can't go into. But I also can't go in. Even the surrounding area, unless I want to put my hands on a sacrifice, I have nothing to do there. I can't go in. So my status is not that much difference from a non-Jew. Not that different. All right. The current situation. By the way, so how do you the political situation? I don't see Harabite as a political issue. Harabite is a religious issue. Um, we have a lot of political problems, I think, because we haven't stressed our religious rights on the Temple Mount. I mean, you've heard reports about the soldiers going into in Gaza, almost every home they went into, they saw that picture of Al Aqsa, what they call Al Aqsa. By the way, the Arabs, they call all of the Temple Mount Al Aqsa. You're aware of that, yes? Right? And every Jew that goes into the Temple Mount is a settler, right? Jews going in to visit the Temple Mount are settlers violently entering Al Aqsa. That's what you see on the Arab press. So I believe that if we were more forthright in changing the status quo, having Jews pray on the Temple Mount, that would take the wind out of the sails of the Hamas and a lot of other violent Arab organizations, Muslim organizations, that use the Temple Mount to prove that it's their land. Because we know that, or Uri Tzvi Greenberg, he didn't say it from a religious point of view, but he said, whoever controls the Temple Mount controls all of the land. And the fact is, we'll see a little bit later that the rabbis said something very, very similar 2,000 years ago. And we'll see it, we'll get to that. Why is the political situation changing? Why is the, not, it's, again, it's not political. Why does it need changing? The answer is obvious. Our rights as Jews are being totally nullified, much less so than they used to be. The fact is we can now do some type of prayer there. On the east side of the Temple Mount, you'll see, if you depends what time you go there, but there's prayer on the east side. On the south, and the north, and the west, it's less. That's also going to happen. And by the way, all of these changes have come about because Jews have wanted it to happen. As I said, when I started going up to Har Bayit 27 years ago, we were like 1,000, 2,000 Jews a year. When you get to 70,000, things start changing because there's a demand. When you see on a day like Jerusalem Day or Tisha B'Av or Chol HaMoed, when there's hundreds of Jews waiting to go in to the Temple Mount, like that stresses the policemen. They realize they have to do something about that because they can't leave Jews outside. They have to bring them in somehow. So that means instead of groups that are 4 or 5, which it used to be many years ago, 5 Jews went into them at the same time. It was like it's a holiday. Now there's groups there's a lot of Jews going there, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 Jews at a time. So we're making progress, but it depends on our demanding it. I think of it in the terms of if a king had a palace, and if he knew that he would open his palace, nobody would come visit. He wouldn't open his palace. Hashem, like there's something going on that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is letting us get more rights as we demand them, because Hashem wants a situation where we want to be there. My talk to you this evening, I would be rare and happy if I knew that you were just going to go to Har Bayit and then afterwards, okay, I've been there. I'm hoping that we come to a point where we realize we have to go there a lot because something happens there that can't happen anyplace else. Even if I go 2 or 3 times a year, once a month, once a week, I hope that you'll make that change to realize that why do I go to the Kotel if I can go to Har Bayit? That's the change that has to be made. And once we make that change, Beit HaMikdash is just around the corner. But right? Prayer, Hishtachavaya. And at the meeting we've had, what's that? Hishtachavaya. Hishtachavaya. Don't do it here. It's not permitted here. Hishtachavaya is when you lay down on your face with your arms extended, arms and legs extended. That's only permissible on the Temple Mount. Can't do it anyplace else. Until recently, that was not allowed. I mean, it's incredible what kind of progress we are making. Prayer. I mean, we can now say prayer out loud. We can say Kedusha, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh out loud. We can also now sing on Har HaBayit Jewish songs. And Itamar Ben Gvir told us at the meeting on Thursday, it's my policy, singing and dancing, according not crazy, but in the ruach of halacha, is permissible on the entire Temple Mount. Now that hasn't sifted down to the policemen as we saw today. I don't know how many of you here are connected anyway to the Temple Mount WhatsApp groups, but we saw. Okay, you can do a scan, you'll be connected. But what Itamar told us on Thursday did not happen today. But like everything else on Har HaBayit, we're going to have to push. We're going to have to push another 10 meters, another 20 meters, and it'll happen. It's just a matter of time. There are no Israeli flags. And that's another busha. That's right. Yeah. They won't arrest you. They used to arrest you. Now what they'll do is they'll make you fold it up. They might escort you out, but nothing much more than that will happen. Because on certain days like Jerusalem Day, on Yom Ha'atzmaut, Chol HaMoed, people try to hide flags and then they unveil them. And then the police don't like that, but it's happening more and more. It can't be stopped. I mean, it's a tidal wave that can't be stopped. It all depends on what to do. Sometimes I say, you don't have to educate a bee to go to a flower. A bee was born with the desire to go to a flower. And when Jews understand what the Temple Mount is, there won't have to be an organization like ours to help them go there. There's no organization to encourage Jews to go to the Kotel, right? They think that's the holiest place, so they go there. Once it's clear that that's the Temple Mount, then our Amutah will have done its purpose and will probably cease to exist. But that's something that has to be in our consciousness. Why is it so important for us to send the Temple Mount? Our mitzvah is to build Beit HaMikdash. Okay, that's not. Yes, question. Question, yes. Yeah. What he mean, where we're allowed to go. He means where halachically we're allowed to go. He didn't mean there's places where it's forbidden for us to go. He knows that. What he means is any place that we halachically are allowed to go, which is all around all four sides of the Temple Mount. As far as he's concerned, there's no problem singing and dancing. Right? Okay. All right. We have a mitzvah to build a temple. Now that's not a mitzvah that once was, and it's no longer a mitzvah. There's a concept in Judaism, mitzvah l'dorot. It's a mitzvah forever. That means if the temple doesn't exist, you have to do whatever you can to build it. And our rabbis even said 2,000 years ago, any generation which doesn't build a temple, that's as if they destroyed it. Now, that doesn't mean that in this generation it's going to happen. What it does mean is we have to do whatever we can. The first step to rebuilding the temple, I'd say the first brick that we have to lay is connecting ourselves there. How in heaven's name can we build a temple if we're not connected to the Temple Mount? If we haven't started praying in the Temple Mount? Another organization which I started, by the way, which we'll get to in a minute about the different organizations, I saw that Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, wrote a lot about building a synagogue in the Temple Mount. Now that's my profession is building, so I really related to that. And after he was Iftar, I went to his son, Rav Shmuel, who was the chief rabbi of Tzfat. And I said, your father said this is something we need to do. Why don't we make an amutah to build a synagogue in the Temple Mount? And he said, I'm with you, let's do it. And we did. The name of the Amuta is called Amuta Lakamat Bate Knesset the Yishai organization for the building of synagogues on the Holy Mountain. By the way, why did it say Holy Mountain and not Temple Mount? Because when we formed the Amuta in 2013, the Rasham Ha'amutot, the registrar, wasn't willing to have the concept of building a synagogue on the Temple Mount. So we had to change it to Har HaKodesh. But the fact is that it was actually good because in the Tanakh, it's referred to as Har HaKodesh, so that's okay. Well, yeah. No, we do know where it has to be. We can't build it in Erzurum because we know it's on. It has to be in the Temple Mount. We know where. But I have to give a proviso. There has to be something that happens before we build a Beit Mikdash. We have to renew the Sanhedrin because, as you're saying, there's many halakhic questions that shall arise. We have to dig. We have to see where things were. We don't need a prophet. We don't need a prophet, but we need to know exactly where it was. And there will be questions that arise that only the Sanhedrin can answer. Now, that itself is an extremely knotty issue. I live in, as I mentioned, Beit Orot neighborhood, and one of Israel's senior Zionist rabbis lives there, Rav Dov Lior. And he, for many years, has wanted to see the Sanhedrin coming into being. And I once asked him, Kvod Rav, what's preventing it from happening? So he laughed. He said, 70 rabbis can't agree on the hashgacha that you need for water, and water doesn't need hashgacha. And you're telling me, how do we get a dream? That itself is going to be a nace. I have a dream about that, which we won't get into now, but that has to happen before we can even think about building the Sanhedrin, building the Beit HaMikdash. But the other organization that I started for building a synagogue, we don't need Sanhedrin for that because we know more or less where the Beit HaMikdash is going to be. We can build synagogues around that. And my next step, by the way, is to find an architect who is very well connected in Yerushalayim and start planning. Because today, with Revit, with Bina Malachti, artificial intelligence, within a very short time, you can have the entire Har HaBayit planned and ready to build. That's something that I hope to do. What are the key I think I answered that question. Why is it so important? We have to get to the Beit HaMikdash. We're not going to get there until we connect to Har HaBayit. What are the key There's Beyadenu, which is, I guess, the foremost organization, the most active organization. There is, so it's called, remind me, Chozrim Lahar. Chozrim Lahar, they're the ones, if you saw in the news, those that brought the little goat up to the Temple Mount before Pesach. They like doing those kinds of things which are going to get kotrot and try and change radically the status quo in one shot. There's the organization which I mentioned, Yishai. By the way, why did they call it Yishai? Yishai was the father of David, in the same way that building Bate Knesset will be the father of building Beit Mikdash. And Yishai is also initials for Yachad Shivtei Yisrael. Because the temple was destroyed because of disunity, we'll rebuild it with unity. So that's what we call the Yishai. There's also the women for the Beit Mikdash, Nashim LaMikdash, a women's organization. And what other organizations do we have? The Yeshivat Beit HaMikdash, Yeshivat Har HaBayit. And Yeshivat Har HaBayit is there in the morning, it's there in the afternoon. They study there. They try and study there as much as they can. But if they can't study inside, they study just outside. They go back in. They go in and out as much as they can, morning and afternoon. And it's something which is really taking off. They spearhead a lot of very good things. The main mission is to take down roadblocks. I mean, we believe that when the Jewish people can freely go up to the Temple Mount, things will naturally evolve. I mentioned to Itamar also on Thursday. I said, listen, people that work, they can't just take off work and go to Har HaBayit. That's like half a work day. We have to have evening hours so people can, after work, can go to Yerushalayim and go into the Temple Mount. If we're like 70,000 this year, if it would be open in the evening hours, would be 200,000 to 300,000, just like that. Another thing we have to do is Shabbat. We're trying to get Har HaBayit open on Shabbat, and it used to be open on Shabbat, before the year 2000. You know that in the year 2000 there was Arab riots after Ariel Sharon at Harabait, and since then it's been closed. Even though 2003, when Harabait was reopened, shortly thereafter the Knesset itself recommended reopening the Temple Mount on Shabbat, and it hasn't happened. Another thing that I recommended to Itamar this past week, let's open up Harabait at midnight from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur, so we can do slichot on Harabait at midnight for a month and a half. Can you imagine going up to Harabait at the middle of the night? There's no Arabs there. Nobody's on Harabait. What's the problem? Nobody's really thought about it. So we have to start thinking about it. But again, when Jews push for it, it's going to happen. I even thought about starting. We should maybe start an organization. The mate. How do you translate mate in English? The staff for eliminating the status quo. Religious, non-religious, whoever wants to join it, just get as many people to join it and put pressure on the government. Stop the status quo. After the 7th of October, especially the status quo, it just makes no sense to have a status quo. What issues are being included now by Beyadenu and how can we help? I mentioned them. We want to do everything we can to remove all the things preventing us from being Jews on the Temple Mount. And the way you can help, first of all, being up on the issues. If you, with the QR, you get these things onto your phone every day. You can see what's going on in Temple Mount. And clearly donations. And when you give donations, what? Oh, these are in English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, the WhatsApp group, I don't know if it's an English WhatsApp group. Ah, that's an English WhatsApp group. Ah, okay, very good. Oh, okay, very good. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I only have as much time as you have. I can spend more time here as if you have. I have time. I prepared like a little booklet which we can go through. I'll go into a little bit more depth about certain answers that I gave, which I didn't really give a lot of answers to, an in-depth answer to. So if you want to take these, I have I made 15 copies, which is enough for, I guess, everybody to take one. Give Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adamah. Now it's in Hebrew, but I'll translate things as necessary. On the very front page, on the very front page. Ah, okay.
route that English people do, which is through the southern, okay, through the southern entrance up to Eastern. Okay, and then the police will take us to the northern. And what statement is prepared for this? If you give it a good tour right away. Okay, but there is a chance we will be with the ball. There's a chance that we will be taking the southern route passing the fountain, where some people went back to it. Okay, so that's the first part of it. We got through it successfully. It is kind of flat. It was my music for that. Okay, then we're not going to come around and say no. No, the second hurdle, and the most interesting hurdle, and I think more difficult. Well, this is a revolution. Okay, the second. The second hurdle is once we get to the Golden Gate, okay, which is Shara, which Dan Yaakov will explain a little bit what they're doing.
Well, what we're trying to do is, unfortunately, even though they talk about a status quo, it's only for Jews. The Arabs have built more and more all the time, and they took over that whole room at Shar HaRachamim. We told that also to Itamar on Thursday. This just doesn't make any sense. You want to keep it closed to everybody? That's okay. You want to have people in it? You got to let us in too. But it's become another mosque. So we're trying to get that changed. The gate is closed. It used to be open, but it's closed. Sometimes. No, no, yeah.
And then if we're not allowed to do the whole then we will come back, we will return to the steps, and we will have the pure offer.
To join the bond, would we still be allowed to sing Israeli songs?
No.
Actually, that would be a good idea if you guys. Oh, really? Sure. No, but clearly, I mean, songs that not just any song, a song that has a spiritual nature to it. Yeah. Am Yisrael Chai. Sure. Yeah. Something of that nature. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. That it should be okay. It should be. The way we make it as okay is by doing it. Doing it.
The one we try to is slightly more if you that the heart no. We may have to that is according to that is the majority of things. Okay, so there's a minority view. You go okay. The majority view is
the way we do it, yeah.
Yaakov but not in the book. Is that okay?
Fine.
Okay.
Fine. But it definitely, if you can sing something, do it. That's great. I'm all in favor. Dancing also.
Dress code is
Women shouldn't wear pants. No. That's also likely, but I don't think that. I don't think they make women cover their hair, but because single women go up and they don't have to. If you go up to that's the problem. Yes, yes, that's right. Yeah, right. That's right. Oh,
Okay, so if we're trying to be, but if you're trying to be a tourist group and everyone shows up as tourists.
I remember we had a box at the entrance for our skirts, not what the Muslims give. Is that still there? Because the women, uh-huh. Because if women don't go up in pants, in our groups, if they go up without a hair covering, it's because the police don't do anything, the Muslims don't do anything. That's okay. But the tourist groups that are not related to us, the Muslims try and make them, yeah.
You have to confirm with the bus if they're leaving Sunday.
Yes. Everyone by Wednesday.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, okay, and today certain way. Okay? This is definite, yes.
Sorry to go back to women say we have to wear a dress.
I'll be full details. Well, you will try. Sure. I will be, I don't want to take problems away from, you know. Make I will be detailed. Oh, yeah, on the one side. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. You're not going to say
Okay, the cover page. Cover page. Why does it? We took the name Beyadenu. Now, what is Beyadenu? Where did that start? Beyadenu. Moshe, not Moshe Dayan. It wasn't Rav Goren either. It was Moti Gur. So we took the name Beyadenu. I mean, when he said it, it was like a declaration. For us, it's a challenge. When we say Beyadenu, it's a challenge. We have to make it Beyadenu. We have to make it into our hands. It currently isn't enough in our hands, but by us doing what we have to do, it will become in our hands. So for us, let's make it Beyadenu. All right. If you look at the next page, this is a graph of what I was telling you about the number. Now, you see the first one is 2009, between 2009 and 2025. I started going up to the Temple Mount 11 years before 2009. Now, 2009, it says 5,000. We're like 1,000, 2,000. That was it. And you see in the graph, we're in the middle of 2025. We're going to surpass, last year was 58,000. We're going to get to about 70,000 this year. We just stay on track what we're doing now. We'll get to 70,000. And that's the key. I remember even the first time I went up to Har HaBayit 27 years ago, I asked the rabbi that I was with, how do we change this? He said, the way to change this is getting more Jews here. Because the government's not going to help you. The rabbin is not going to help you. The police aren't going to help you. And the courts are not going to help you. The way that you make changes is bringing more and more Jews here. And we see it happening. We see it happening. It's incredible. Okay, now let's... I don't think so. I don't think there's been an attempt because there are people that are ideologically, they're not even going into Yehudan, Shomron. They have this ideology not to do it. Yeah, yeah. I don't, to my best understanding, they've not been interested or willing. But that's something which will change. It's not a matter of time. Okay, but I want to show you on page 3. We have to understand when I was asked how has the halacha evolved. It hasn't evolved. Let's explain how it was when the Jews left Egypt. After the Jews received the Torah, how did they go through? We just read it 2 weeks ago in Bamidbar. If you look at this map, you see on the 4 different directions. One closest to us as we look at the page is the east side. That was Degel Machane Yehuda, right? On the west side, Degel Machane Ephraim. On the north side, Degel Machane Dan. On the south side, Degel Machane Reuven. Each one of those flags had 3 tribes. 3 times 4 is 12. So we had the 12 tribes around. That was in the desert, right? What was the next innermost circle? The Leviim. The Leviim who were not counted among the tribes. Instead, 2 of Joseph's children are counted, and Levi is not counted. We have the next. And what's the next inside? What's called where the Mikdash, where the Mishkan was located. That's called Machane Shechina. So we have on the outside Machane Israel, Machane Leviah, and Machane Shechina. Okay. Now, in what we read just a couple of weeks ago in Parshat Bamidbar, it says, "Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe lemor," and God spoke to Moses, saying, "Sav et bnei Israel, command the people of the children of Israel, v'yishlachu miyam machane, they should send out of the camp, meaning the camp Machane Israel, the wide where all the tribes were, Kol Tzarua, the whole Zav, the whole Tamei L'nefesh, that whoever had leprosy, which we don't know exactly what it is today, but it was not just a physical manifestation, it was also a spiritual thing. They had to be outside altogether, the entire camp. And then Rashi comes to explain what we're talking about. Toch haklaim hi machane shechina. Inside the curtains is called the dwelling, the divine dwelling. That's where the Mishkan was, the tabernacle. That's the first holiest place. Then Chanayat HaLeviim, the encampment of the Leviim, Saviv, around it. Kemo shemefurash, Parshat Bamidbar Sinai, Hu Machane Leviah, just like it speaks about in Parshat Bamidbar. That's called Machane Leviah. Umisham va'ad sof ha'machane, and from there out to the end of the Machane Degalim, to the end of the flags, the whole arba ruchot, the 4 directions, Hu Machane Yisrael, that's the Machane of Israel. Okay. Then he explains what's the function in terms of purity and impurity. What's the function of those different machanot? As I said, a leper had to go out entirely outside of the camps. Sarua nishtaleach chutz lekulan. He sent out of all of them. What's the next line? Hazav mutar b'machane Yisrael, which would be Greater Jerusalem. We look at it today. Umeshulach minha shtein. In other words, he can be with someone in the camp of Israel, but he can't be in the camp of Leviah, and he can't be in the Mishkan. Tamei lenefesh, that is somebody who has been tamei in contact with tamei mate. Mutar af b'machan Leviah, ve'eno meshulach ela miashchina. Now, what is Rashi saying? What is he saying? He's saying that person who's tamei mate can go into Machane Leviyah. What is Machane Leviyah? It's all of Harabayit except where the Beit Mikdash was and the Chel surrounding it. Rashi is telling us right here what was going on in the desert when the Jews left Egypt. And even if you were tamei mate, you could be inside the Machane Leviyah, and that's Harabayit, except for the Azara. All right, and we see it also. It says in the Torah itself, "Vayikach Moshe." If we look at the bottom of the page, "Vayikach Moshe," and Moses took et atzmot Yosef, the bones of Joseph, imo with him. Ki hashbea hishbea et bnei Israel, because Joseph commanded the children of Israel, lemor, saying, "Pakod yifkod alehem etchem." HaKadosh Baruch Hu is charging you. V'halitem et atzmotai mizechem. Take my bones with you. Moshe was in Machane Leviyah, and he had Joseph's bones with him in Machane Leviyah. And that's how Chazal learned that somebody who's tamei mate, not only tamei mate, the mate himself, the dead person himself, can be inside Machane Leviyah. Whoever tells you this nonsense, you can't go up to Vayit because you're tamei mate, it's nonsense. The Torah is very clear about it. You can't go into where the Mishkan, you can't go just around the Mishkan, which is called the Chel, which we'll see shortly. But 90% of Harabayit is permissible. So, and then they'll say it's karet. That's also not true. Even let's say you went into Harabayit and you went into where you're not supposed to go. Karet is only if you do something purposefully, not if you do it by accident. And if you go up with the groups that go up halachically, you can't even do it by accident. But to say it's karet, to matmate, complete and total nonsense. Okay? And if we look at what I did, now let's look at what it was when the Mikdash, on the next page 4. Yeah. But that's exactly what. Okay, where do we see that? We see that again because we see that if you look at the Timara of the Machane Leviyah, we see Machane Shechina, which is the Mishkan. We see Machane Leviyah, which is around it. And if you look at the next page, we'll translate it into what is on Harabayit. You see in the center of the picture, you see not the Mishkan, the Mikdash. Okay? And then you see around that, you see that all of that area around the Mikdash, and then you see all of Jerusalem around it. What's all of Jerusalem is called Machane Israel. That's Machane Israel. Around the Mikdash, inside, is Machane Israel. And the area that you sidewalk around it, that's the other one. That's Machane Shechina. There, that's where we're forbidden if we're tamei mate. Now, you see that kind of sidewalk. That's what's called the Chel. It was about approximately 10 meters wide. And that by rabbinic prohibition, not by Torah prohibition, by rabbinic prohibition, tamei mate can't go there. But by Torah prohibition, tamei mate could even go there. But the rabbis prohibited. And where do we see this in the Mishnah? We can see it in the Mishnah as well. The Mishnah in Masechet Kelim. There's you know what the Mishnah is, yes, a little bit. The Mishnah is the oral Torah, right? There's two parts to the oral Torah. There's the Mishnah, and there's the Gemara, the Talmud, which is the discussion of the Mishnah. But the Mishnah is the oral law, and there's one of the tractates in the Mishnah is called Kelim, and it describes the different levels of impurity. And if you look at the line with a marker on it, and it says Hachel Mekudash Mimenu. In other words, we've gone through a number of steps: the land of Israel, walled cities, and then it comes to Hachel, that kind of sidewalk around the Mikdash. That tamei mate can't go into. Now, if it says on the sidewalk tamei mate can't go into, it means every place else he can go into. So it says it in the Mishnah itself that tamei mate outside the Chel is okay. So that gets even more squarely on the head of the nail, which you were asking, where do we make the connection? Here it says it exactly. Outside of the Chel, tamei mate is permissible. And then we see the Rambam. If you see the whole line, also the Rambam says tamei mate, afilu hamet atzmo. Someone who is tamei mate, even the dead body itself, mutar likanes lahar habayit. We're talking about the Rambam, okay? Shene'emar, as it says, as we saw in the Torah, Moses took the bones of Joseph, imo with him. B'machane Leviyah. All right. So now we see it. We see it in the Torah. We see it in the Rambam. I mean, there's no way we can get around this. Anybody that tells you that's forbidden, tell him that he hasn't studied halacha. Show him the Rambam. If we look at page, in terms of translating where the Beit of Harabayit, on page 6 you see a topographical map. We know that the Beit HaMikdash, the highest point of Har HaMoriah, Mount Moriah, right? The highest point is where the gold dome is today. That is the highest point of the Temple Mount. And that's where the Mikdash stood. It was when Solomon built the temple, it was only 50 amas, like 250 meters by 250 meters. And that small is the area of the Temple Mount in the time of Solomon. The large rectangle is what it was in the time of the Second Temple. After Hordos, Herod did his addition. What we see by the wall, we don't see the east wall that Solomon built, but it's the wall that we see is in the same place. It didn't move. Harabayit was expanded. It was expanded to the west, and it was expanded to the south. But in the east, it's in the same place that it always was. And we see another interesting map. We know that the temple was in an exact east-west direction. How do we know that, by the way? Because we have descriptions by Chazal. Our rabbis explain to us that we know that in the summertime, the sun is more on the south, and in the wintertime, it's more on the north, right? If you look at the sunrise, sunset, right? Any place in Israel, it's the same thing. In the summertime, the sun's sunrise and sunset is to the south side. I think that's south, right? The ocean is that way. That's the ocean. So if you look in the morning, the sun rises there. In the wintertime, it rises there. In the summertime, it sets there. And in the wintertime, it sets there, right? Yeah. So the rabbi said the temple had to be in exactly east-west direction. So the light didn't matter what time, what season it was, the light would always come through the gate to the Beit Mikdash. So it had to be in an east-west direction. And that's what and then it went towards the east. If you look on the next page, you see like more of the way. And if we go to the page, you see even more photographical image. If you look at page 12, page 12 shows you exactly what the temple was like today. Look where you see the temple on the map, even though it doesn't yet exist. You'll be going, what you see that dotted line around, if you look at that, not in color, but you see kind of a dotted line. I think that's the path that you guys will be taking. Ah, I see. Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. Now let's look at another page, which is very, very interesting. When people say that it's forbidden to go on Harabayit, let's look at page. Ah, yes. Look at page 5. Now it's very interesting. This is from the Rambam. He wrote what's called the Yad Yad. Yad is like 14, and there's 14 volumes. And he covers all of the entire Torah. Ever since the Rambam, there's never been anybody who wrote something about the entire Torah until we came to what's called Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Epstein, about 150 years ago, I think. He wrote something which is also all-encompassing. But since the Rambam, nobody else has done it. In other words, he wrote about the laws that even had nothing to do with his time. There was no Beit Mikdash in his time, but he wrote as if there was. But he says something very, very important. It's a positive commandment to have awe of God. As it says, you should be in awe of my Mikdash. Below mina Mikdash, it's not from the physical building that you're aware, but Mishek, the one who commanded, is the Kodesh Baruch. We Jews don't worship buildings. We worship a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And we go up to Harabayit, even though there's no Mikdash, we still are in awe of that place. And we'll even see something. If you see the parts that's in golden below, we're going to skip back to the top in a minute, but just look at what's golden below. Af al pi, Hamikdash hayom charev ba'avonotenu. Even though the Mikdash was destroyed in our sins, chayav adam b'morato. A person is a Jew is commanded to be in awe of the place. Kimosha hayan nahug bebinyano, just like it was when it was built. Lo yikanes ela lamakom shemutar lo yikanes. You cannot go into the place except what is permissible by law, just like it was in the time of Mikdash. Velo yeshev ba'azara, and he shouldn't sit in the place where the temple was. Velo yakel barosho, kemo sha'ar and he shouldn't be light on the east side, because that was the entrance to the temple. And now here's the interesting thing. Et shabtotai tishmeru umikdashi tirau. My Sabbath you must observe, and my sanctuary you must be in awe. Ma shmirat Shabbat le'olam. Listen to this. This is incredible. Just like the observing of Shabbat is forever, af mora mikdash le'olam is forever. Af al pi shecharev ve'mikdash be'kedushato omed. He's saying something incredible here. The Rambam is telling us, and he lived at the time when there was no mikdash. The awe of the mikdash is forever. It doesn't matter what the mikdash is there or not. You have to conduct yourself on the Temple Mount as if the mikdash was there. And at the first part of the page, we won't go into the very first halacha. The yirah of going into the mikdash. And then he describes how you go into the mikdash. If it was forbidden to go into the Temple Mount, would the Rambam explain how to do it? It's crazy. People say that the Rambam is telling you how to go into the Temple Mount. You don't do this, you do that, you don't do this, you do that. You can read it on your own. But the important thing, the message that I'm trying to make here is the Rambam is explaining to you how to go into the Temple Mount. He wouldn't tell you how to do it if it was forbidden. Okay? Okay, the last thing we've spoken about the where, and we've spoken about the how. We haven't spoken about the why. A little bit, but not a lot. Let's talk about the why. So if we go to page 8. If I ask you, what is the purpose of being a Jew? Let's get down to basics. What do you say? What would you tell me? Enlighten the world. Okay. Okay. Holiness. Right. Our function in the world is to be holy. It's just like who commanded us. Command the entire people of Israel. Kidoshim to you must be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. You must be a holy people. I am holy, so you must be holy. In Latin, they call that imitatio Dei, if you've ever heard of that. We are supposed to imitate God. How do you imitate God? Just as I am merciful, you must be merciful. Just as I do kindness, you must do kindness. We are meant to be like God. That as much as we can. We can't be God because God is infinite. We are finite. But our goal is to be as close to God as possible. And you might say, well, what did God basically do by creating a mikdash? He said, I want to dwell among you. Now, what that means is, if God is infinite, what does infinite mean? It means infinite life. Infinite life. Now, what do we do when we go to a mikvah? Or why are the stages of the impurity, they get finer and finer and finer? The most impure thing is being a leper. What's being a leper? You actually did something wrong. I mean, you spoke Lashon Hara, like you did something which destroys the fabric of society. You have to go outside of the entire camp of Israel until you correct yourself. What's the next level of tumah? Where you can come into Jerusalem, but you can't go into the Temple Mount. That's where, like, a woman who has had her period and is not yet pure, a man who has had an emission which is not a normal emission. It's a difficult emission which he has to get, maybe has to go to a special kind of natural fountain and dunk there. The next level which is much more normal. A man has had an emission, but then he goes to a mikvah. But it's not something which is an avera. Nobody's done an avera. It's bodily emissions that you go to a mikvah for. And what's the finest? If you think of a sieve, you have smaller and smaller holes. What's the smallest hole at the sieve? Not only I haven't done anything wrong, and it has nothing to do with my own body, but I've been in touch with Tumat Mate. We have to get, when we get close to a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the Temple Mount, we get close to internal life. Coming to the Temple Mount is we want to connect to the best possible way to eternal life. We're getting a recharge. It's almost like doing a reset on a computer. We're ridding ourselves of all possible tumah that we possibly can. Today we can't get rid of tumat mate, so we can't go to the center. But the idea is to get ourselves in a situation where we can be eternal life. Eternal life is kedusha. That's kedusha. And everything we do to become kadosh is to become as close as we can to eternal life. There's another issue. Who is supposed to build the mikvah or the mikdash? Who builds the mikdash? We said before it's a mitzvah for all generations. How do we know that it's a mitzvah for all generations? How do we know that it wasn't just one time? So we see it item number 3. Mitzvah taseh lasot beit Hashem mukhan liyot makrivim bo karbonot vechogigin elav shalosh pamim b'shana shenemar v'asu lemikdash. This is also from the Rambam, where he's saying it's mitzvah taseh. And it's not just one mitzvah to say. As we said before, 1/3 of the 613 commandments to do with the mikdash, which means we don't have a mikdash, we're missing out on 1/3 of our commandments. And the Rambam is saying this is a mitzvah for all generations. It's not something which ended. In our day, in 2025, Tafshin Pei, we have a mitzvah to build the mikdash. We have to do everything we possibly can to make it happen. And also we see, the chayavim, hakol chayavim livnot. Everybody has to be part of this. And they have to help it with them and with their money, with their bodies and with their money to build the mikdash. And this is what Chazal said: Kol dor she'enu nivna biyamin maleh alav ki'ilu hichrivo. Every generation that hasn't been involved in building the mikdash to every extent that they can, it's as if they destroyed it. Ad kadei kach. You understand what we're saying? That if we're not doing what we can, which right now is for us going up to the Temple Mount and becoming part of it, but as much as you can, 2 or 3 times a year at the holidays, whatever you can do, connect to the Temple Mount. Oh, so then there's another question. Well, who's going to build the mikdash? Is it going to be built? Some people say it's going to descend from heaven. That's a non-Jewish belief. You won't find any place in the Torah, you won't find any place in the oral Torah that it says the temple is going to descend from heaven. That's an idea which is said by people that don't have anything to do with Harabait or the Mikdash. When we say that it's going to come from heaven, what we mean is that after we build it, a divine presence will descend from a Kodesh Baruch Hu onto Mikdash. But that's not going to happen if we don't build it with our own hands. So it's a mitzvah to build a Mikdash. It's not going to be from heaven. Are there going to be nisim, miracles on the temple? Of course, but only when they're started. For example, in the time of the first Beit Mikdash, Esh would come down, fire would come down from heaven to eat the korban. But when would that happen? Only when the Kohen, Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't need the Kohen to light the light on the Mizbeach, right? But the idea is you start, you, Israel, you start, and I finish. That's another incredible thing. We know about what's called the lechem apanim, the breads, the breads that were made lasted a week. If they last a week, bread doesn't last a week. I mean, I have never put bread on my counter, and it doesn't within a week. It's either stale or it's moldy. But this bread lasted all week. It's a miracle. But even though it's a miracle, if you look, the Torah commands us to make those shells for the bread like hollow, like a half circle, so that air can circulate. If for heaven's sake, if it's a miracle, it's a miracle. What do we need that for? That's the same idea. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "You do your part, and I'll do my part." And that runs everywhere. Everything in Jewish life. We don't base ourselves on miracles. We pray that Hashem will help, but it's in our hands that we have to do. What we can do, we have to do ourselves. That's why we don't just sit in the yeshiva. We have to be in the army. Okay, so man has to build it. But who? Maybe just the Mashiach. Maybe it's just the Mashiach. That's also not so. because we see quotes in the Gemara that, especially in Jerusalem, that the Messiah will come after the Mikdash has been built. Surprising, but there's sources here. I put sources here. It's no, it's not prior. It's not prior. It's not prior. I can show you if you look at Aleph. You see 5 Aleph. Amar Rabbi Acha Zot Omeret Beit Hamikdash Atid Lifanot Kodem Malchut Beit David. This is from the Talmud. Okay, I didn't make this up. All right. Amar Rabbi Acha. Rabbi Acha said this. What he's saying is this: in the time of the temple, people had to bring. When you plant a tree, for 3 years you can't eat the fruit, right? You're familiar with that. The fourth year, you can bring it if you've redeemed it. Now, you can either do one of things. If you're living in, you've got fruits on your trees, and it's the 4th year, and the temple exists, you can do one of two things. You can take the fruits and bring them to the temple. Or you say, I'm transferring the holiness of these fruits onto these coins, this money, and then going to Jerusalem and abuse this. Now, what did they say in the time of the temple? When there were not enough fruits, they told people that are living far away, don't redeem your fruit. Bring them. We want to see Jerusalem filled with fruit. So don't redeem your fruit. Bring your fruit from Netanya. They wanted to see a lot of fruit. Now, when there was a lot of fruit, when all of a sudden the land was very fertile, there was also fruits, they said, okay, people that are far away, you can redeem it now. But they made a condition. They made a condition. Listen very carefully. When the temple is rebuilt, we go back to what we were before. People that are far away don't redeem it. Why? The temple has been rebuilt. Doesn't the Messiah come? No. No, the Messiah has not yet come, which means the land is not yet being as fertile as it's going to be when the Messiah comes. So that means the fruit that you're planting and getting from your gardens that are far away, bring it. Because the Messiah, even though the temple has been built, the Messiah hasn't come yet. And that's what he's saying here. Amar Rabbi Acha. Rabbi Acha is saying, Zot Omeret, that means Shebeit Hamikdash Atid Libanot Kodem Malchut Beit David. The Beit Hamikdash will be built before Beit David. We see it very clearly. We also see it in our prayers, by the way. If you look at the Shemona Esrei that we pray every day, we have the order of the Geulah is written very clearly. Kibbutz Galuyot, the Sanhedrin, that's the Chachamim. Afterwards, Bniyat Yerushalayim, that's Mikdash, and then Melech Mashiach. Every day we say it 3 times a day. We're saying every day 3 times a day that the Beit Mikdash is before Mashiach. What does that mean? That means us. After the Sanhedrin, clearly. We can't just start building it right now. But it's clear, we don't wait for it to descend from heaven. We don't wait for the Mashiach. It's our responsibility. And it's also our responsibility there should be a Sanhedrin. It doesn't make sense that we have all these rabbis in Israel. They're not making a Sanhedrin. That's another thing we have to demand, right? Because we can't have a Mikdash without Sanhedrin. And now just close the evening for now. What do we need to do on Harabayit? What are the mitzvot that we can today do on Harabayit? Karbanot. We don't need Beit Mikdash to do Karbanot. We can, in the place of the Mizbeach, we can do Karbanot. If it was in the news, I don't know if everybody saw it, just like on Shavuot, they brought Shtei Halechem. It was a major incident, and they were thrown out very quickly. But for the first time in 2,000 years, something which is done in the Beit Mikdash was done in Harabayit. And that's only because Jews who don't care about the police, they don't care about the Waqif, this is our place, and this is what we're going to do. And they did it. So that's one thing. Tefillah, the most important thing. And as I said to you, if you look, you can you see quotes from King Solomon's dedication speech of the Beit Mikdash. You can read it in the Tanakh. I have quotes here. He says it's a place to come to pray for every tzarot, whatever tzarot that you have, every difficulties you have in life. Your son he has not gotten married yet. Your child doesn't know how to prepare us for a mitzvah. I have a problem with parnasah. Whatever it is, personal things, national things. This is the place of prayer. That's the place we have to go to pray. We believe that a Jew that prays any place else, his prayer first goes to the Temple Mount and then goes up to Kodesh Baruch. So let's go to the actual place we have to pray. What else? You have the mitzvah to to be in awe of the place. That's it's interesting, In mitzvot, you have positive commands and negative commands, not things you're supposed to do and things you're not supposed to do. In the Rambam, where does he put Morah HaMikdash? A positive commandment. It's a mitzvah asay. That means it's something you have to do. How do you do it? You don't do it by not going to the Temple Mount. You do it by going to the Temple Mount and being in awe. So whoever tells you by not going to the Temple Mount, you're doing Morah Mikdash, it's like Firkeret. It's like the exact opposite. You can only do Morah Mikdash, and you could do it today, even though there's no temple, by going to the Temple Mount. The other thing we do is Kibush. How do the Jewish people reconnect to the Temple Mount? By going there. I mean, going there, not just like you're not going to do it, you're just not going to go there and say, well, I've been there, right? That's not going to be you guys. You're going to decide to go 3 times a year, maybe once a month. Whatever you decide to do, you're going to make it part of your lives because that's the only way we're going to have the Beit Mikdash. Thank you. Yeah, sure. He passed away not long ago. He used to go to Hawaii. I'm not exactly sure.